So I saw Suicide Squad a few days ago, and I pretty much forgot about it already. I could end the video there, really. There seems to be a lot of mixed opinions about the movie. Critics are saying that it's bad, and comic book fans seem to like it. As usual, I find myself somewhere in the middle. I certainly don't think it deserves a 26%, but I honestly don't think the movie was very good. I'll try to keep this relatively spoiler-free, but just know that you've been warned. Okay, so what did I not like about the movie? I really place a lot of value on two things when it comes to movies. The first is pacing, and the second is if things that happen make sense. This movie had a lot of problems with both. Starting from the beginning, I really didn't like the first 10 minutes or so when it explains the backstory for all the characters. It's basically a bunch of flashbacks, one after another. I always find flashbacks as a weak way to introduce characters. It's basically the movie equivalent of telling and not showing. One way that they could have done this better is simply by introducing the characters by showing them in prison and how they interact with each other, the guards, and the rest of the inmates, which they do show right after the flashbacks, making the flashbacks pretty pointless. Those extra little tidbits could have been sprinkled out over the rest of the movie, which would have paced everything out much better. I didn't really have a problem with the characters themselves. For the most part, the performances were good. Actually, the only parts I did have a problem with were the Joker and Harley Quinn. So Jared Leto plays the Joker, and it's pretty much exactly what you'd expect if you've seen the trailers for the movie. I'm sure there's some kind of official critic word for it, but basically he's just trying too hard. His performance is awkward and off-putting. Margot Robbie's performance as Harley Quinn was good for the most part, but some of her lines were just dumb. I understand she didn't write it though, so I don't blame her. She did the best with what she was given. Okay, so one part I thought was pretty stupid was when the squad starts their mission and we're introduced to Slipknot, a character we haven't seen before and who had no flashbacks. Do you think that maybe he's going to die in the first few minutes? It's so predictable that it makes me wonder if they did it as kind of a joke. His power, if you can call it that, was completely useless too. He can climb anything, as one of the other characters said, and he does so through the use of a grappling hook belt. That's not really a power, it's just using a piece of technology. And speaking of powers, the selection of who's on the squad to begin with doesn't make a lot of sense to me. You have guy who can shoot things well, guy who can shoot fire, magic sword lady, and crocodile man, who I guess is really strong or something. All those characters make sense and seem useful. But then you have guy who can throw boomerangs, who only ever does so like once, guy who has a hookshot belt, and Harley Quinn, who does nothing. It really doesn't make sense when you consider all the talk at the beginning of the movie about metahumans. I don't really see how Boomerang, Slipknot, and Quinn are metahumans. Why are they on this team? Katana and Deadshot aren't necessarily metahumans either, but at least they're useful. That wasn't the only thing that really didn't make sense though. There's one part that bothered me throughout the whole movie. At one point they give Harley Quinn a cell phone, which she immediately uses to contact the Joker. Why did they do that? It endangers the mission multiple times. I just don't really get it. And speaking of Harley Quinn and the Joker, I didn't really like or understand their relationship. I'm not an avid comic reader, but as far as I know, the Joker sees Quinn as more of just another minion. Their love relationship is really a lot more one-sided and abusive, and it's much more interesting because of that. But in this movie, they made it out to be like the Joker really loved her, or at least thought very highly of her. But that doesn't work with the Joker's character. He's a sociopath. He doesn't care about people or experience emotions like love. That's what makes him dangerous. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but the whole relationship they had in the movie just seemed off. And why was the Joker even in the movie to begin with? It felt like he had a bigger role at some point, but then they removed most of his scenes in editing for whatever reason. If you watch the trailers for the movie, that's what it seems like anyway. I also found a lot of the action scenes in the movie to be kind of boring. I think there was probably a solid 20 minutes of people just running around and shooting with no real consequence or point. This is one of the only movies I've ever seen where I just wanted the action sequences to end so we could get to something meaningful. And then there was an action sequence at the very end of the movie where everything goes into slow motion and Deadshot has to shoot a thing to destroy the villain. It's just weird because we already know that he's not going to miss. That's his power or whatever. It acted like it was a big climactic scene, but there was no tension or anything really. And speaking of the villain, what was the plan there? Shoot a giant beam into the sky to take over the world somehow? Now there were a ton of smaller things that bothered me too, but it'd take too long to get into every one of them. Now, I don't really like to give number ratings because it's all very relative, but I will say that I don't think this movie is worth the $10 to see it in the theater. Wait until it comes out on Redbox. Anyway, I'm Cothrix, and you have a wonderful day.